Welcome back to the Fish Life Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Quarantine party over here at Billy's house.
That's right. We are not 6 feet apart. We are rebels without a cause. My buddy Chris Blackman joining me. We're going to hang out and do a little Fish Life podcasting tonight. What we got going on tonight, Chris? No big deal.
Yeah, it's not really a huge deal, but we got this one guy that's going to be our guest tonight.
Yeah.
And
who are we talking to?
We're talking to Mr. Jacob Wheeler.
No, we're talking to the best fisherman on planet Earth over the last few years, Mr. Jacob Wheeler. I mean, you could make an argument for a couple of other guys, but there's only a couple you could even make the argument with. Mm-hmm. And I would say you'd probably lose that argument because Jacob Wheeler has been as good as anybody on planet Earth when it comes to bass fishing. So, hey, we actually are kind of living up to our overblown hype. Mm-hmm. We always say the Fish Life Podcast, and the life is spelled with a Y. And why do we spell it with a Y, Chris?
Because it's the best damn fishing podcast ever created.
Tonight, that's actually kind of true. Because we got the best bass fishermen on planet Earth hanging out with us. So we're going to give him a call on the phone here in a little while. Man, it is an awesome time of the year. The fish are spawning like crazy all over the lakes. Seems like we're like, in my boat, we had a fish over 8 pounds every day except for one this week. And that one day that we didn't, we had a 7. And we had our most number of over 5-pounders. So, I mean, we had like a 7 and a 6 and several 5s and several 4s. I mean, just who's going to complain about a day like that? Nobody ever in history of bass fishing. Yeah. So that was our worst big fish day of the week. It's been a pretty good week, dog. Like, it's been awesome around here right now. It is really, Lake Fork is unbelievable, man. Every year I get to thinking, man, maybe Lake Fork, there's always that lull, that calm before the storm. And it goes around the lake. You hear guys talking about it, saying, man, maybe Lake Fork isn't quite as good as it used to be. And then all of a sudden, Lake Fork gets right for a week or two. And when it really like peaks and gets right, which I think this last week it really peaked and got right because everybody was catching them. Like, if guys weren't catching them last week, bro, they don't need to be out there.
Oh, yeah.
It was unbelievable. Everybody was smoking them.
That was the general consensus I saw.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I couldn't get on Facebook just without scrolling past the 6, 7, 8 pounder.
It's been unbelievable. And it really the last 2 or 3 weeks, but last week for me, it really turned on for me personally. It seemed like it did for everybody else too as well. So everybody was whacking them last week. But hey, man, you know what? Let's not hold it up. Let's get on into this Jacob Wheeler situation. You're going to have to help me out because I'm going to be nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof. There's not many people that will intimidate me on a bass fishing pond, but this cat right here is one of them. So let's give him a call and see what he has to say.
Hello.
Mr. Wheeler, how you doing, sir?
And just, I'm actually getting ready to fry up some walleye.
Some walleye? My goodness.
Walleye.
You have ventured far away from Lake Fork in a couple of weeks, my man.
No joke. Well, actually, I was surprised when I caught them. I was like, dang, damn. I think they're like, they might be sauger, they might be walleye. I was catching walleye like back in the day when I was like 10 with my dad, but I've not caught a ton of them throughout my life. And so I actually was fishing around here in Tennessee where I live and caught a couple up a river. And I said, dang, yeah, we throw them suckers in the skillet when you catch a couple of them.
I grew up fishing with my father, and I was always the kid on the back of the boat chucking a spinnerbait and a worm while my dad was out there crappie fishing and catfishing. And he swore up and down by crappie. Crappie was the best eating fish, blah, 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 his whole life. Well, he moved to Table Rock Lake and started catching some walleye, and he told me, son, I'll never eat another crappie again.
Really?
Which, if you know Billy Lawson Sr., that's a shock because that sucker loved to eat some crappie back in the day. So
that's what actually one of my favorite fish is a perch. Perch is probably my favorite, which is like basically the same thing, they're just smaller. But,
yeah, we used to
crazy though. I know that's why I said like I'm traveling up north, grabbing a few of them. You get them little eaters, the right eater size, and it's like woof woof. I'll tell you what another one is rock bass. MDJ got me. We actually at a vlog we had up there at Neenah, Wisconsin. He's like, keep them rock bass, keep them rock bass. Hey, rock bass will shock you.
They go hard in the paint, as they say.
Anyway, I had to tell you that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, we used to take those brim or bluegill, whatever. We'd catch them in the ponds, and we'd scale them and then put them in some tinfoil and grill them up whole, and then like peel the meat back off them. And they were delicious, man. Yes, sir.
That's the thing. Truth. There ain't nothing better, man. I know. How's everything been? How's everything been around there?
Dude, man, as good as it was when you guys were here, I wish y'all had been here this week.
Really?
It has been. I just got done telling the viewers, in my boat we had a fish over 8 pounds, and these are customers now. Fish over 8 pounds every day except for one. The one day we didn't, we had a 7-pounder, and that was our best day as far as numbers of fish over 5 pounds. So. It has been just, I mean, it's like everybody on the lakes, like every guide's catching them. You know, it's been, you know, what's happened is we've had a little time and a little bit of a break from some of the rain to clear that water up a little bit more.
Yep.
It got a little bit dirtier after y'all left, and now it's kind of cleared back up again. And we had the new moon on Tuesday night, and another wave pulled in, and even on the south end of the lake, you know, when you guys were here, there was some on the south end, but not very many.
Yeah, it wasn't very many. They were in them northern creeks. It seemed like the majority of them.
That's right. And now all them fish on the southern half of the lake where you can even see better are pulling up, and dude, they're just fish spawning everywhere. It's any corner you pull into pretty much has got bedfish. It's awesome.
I knew that was the thing, man. That place it's interesting because, you know, it just, you have to prep for boat pressure. You have to sort of prepare for multiple things. And so that place is an interesting place to try to navigate and try to prepare for an event. You know, obviously it seemed like there was, you know, obviously we had a big wave that pulled up, a decent sized wave, you know, pretty good wave, but there were still quite a few fish out. You know, they're pre-spawners that were out there. So it was sort of like, you know, but it was sort of like, man, how do you sort of go about it? Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing is, when we were there, the first day of competition, you know, actually the first day prior to practice starting was a calm, like 80-degree day, flat, calm, and sun. And like, you know, and I know, like, that sun comes out in East Texas, springtime, 80 degrees, flat, calm, no wind, and that water temperature skyrockets. So I knew, like, ultimately, I'm thinking, like, man, this is going to be an unbelievable event. And so many fish, and you sort of like, when you're planning for that event, it's tough because we did fish on Saturday. I was going to be fishing on Saturday, me and DC. And so I was like in 38 others. And so, like, I knew just from research and understanding that, I mean, that lake gets crazy crowded on Saturday. I didn't know how bad it actually got.
Well, let me give you
come Saturday. But anyway, so the thing was, it was so interesting. And those fish, like, looking at Score Tracker, we can't look at photos and video, you know, from the event. So, like, we could look at Score Tracker to see what ends up going on in Score Tracker. And I'm looking at the weights, and I'm like, I know it was good from just looking down the bank and seeing quite a few fish had pulled up. But first day of competition, I'm like, holy smokes, you guys are crushing. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, geez. So the crazy thing was, though, when I you know, looking at the 7-day forecast, I sort of anticipated it. Like, you know how it just, you know, how the weatherman is. Some days it's like, you know, they'll be like, oh man, it's gonna be 7 degrees this weekend, and it's like, oh, actually, it's gonna be 59. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh man, no. So that cold front was a little. It wasn't a big giant cold front. It was a little cold front, but it still was crazy how much it affected those fish. Like, that was one thing I noticed. Like, I've seen it in Florida where it really, really affects those fish down there, but it definitely seemed like even those fish that were locked on the bed that I had seen rolling with females had left by the second day of competition on Group B. So that was a really interesting deal for me. Like, I thought I knew some things, and then I really quickly figured out that I didn't know as much as I thought I knew.
Well, you guys had a lot of unique situations. Like you said, the huge warm-up before you got there where we had a couple calm days in the 80s. And that last day before y'all started, I tried to not fish with customers on Fork during the tournament. I ended up fishing one day. It was the Monday, your second qualifying day, I guess, because you were in Group B, was the only day I fished. But I fished up until the tournament started. And that last day in the afternoon, we got a little bit of a south wind after we'd had like 2 straight days of warm, sun, calm. And, dude, they just, I mean, you didn't even have to look at them. You just kind of went down the bank and threw a moving bait and caught them, and it was unbelievable. And I thought you guys were going to kill them. And then the first day they killed them. But then what happened was, like, yeah, we had that little cold front, and it wasn't like a huge cold front. But the sun disappeared for like 5 days in a row. And normally with a cold front, maybe, you get a day of clouds or 2 days, but not that many days in a row. So that heavy cloud cover really exaggerated the effect of that cold front. On top of that, that Saturday that you started, that was the Saturday between the 2 spring break blocks in East Texas, which means that Saturday that y'all fished is the busiest day on Lake Fork every year, consistently. You add on top of it.
I could see it. I could definitely. Yeah. I thought I knew pressure until I rolled up. And I rolled up into one of the areas I was going to fish in the first day of competition, and I counted, like, real quickly, like, not even, like, boats around the corner. I just counted 14 boats, and I'm like,
yep.
Yeah, I'm not fishing here. And I turned around and ran the trees on pad, and I'm like, I'm out.
That is
I'm chopping out now.
That's a battle I'm extremely familiar with.
You go to the next place, and there's 10 boats there. You go to the next place, and you're like, every pocket had a couple boats in there. So it came to the point where you had to get a little bit of a groove and realize, like, listen, you got to get somewhere where you're comfortable at. You know there's fish, and then just calm down, relax, take your time. Because I try to, like, get away from the crowd most of the time, and it seemed like on that lake, it wasn't that easy.
It's not. You know, the deal is, and we've talked about this a little bit before on our channel, but the deal is Lake Fork has this big reputation, like a Guntersville, like a Rayburn, like an Okeechobee. The problem is all those other lakes are over 100,000 acres, and Fork is 27. So you get the same kind of boat traffic, but you put it on, a quarter of the playing field, and it just gets crazy.
No doubt. I think, like you said, I think it was a lot of the fact. I mean, like, I think I fished it a couple times during the TBC and, like, back in the day, and it was like, you'd have the pressure offshore, but there was still fish to be caught shallow, so it was a little bit different. Like in April, like like you even said, like in March, and that time of year when we were there, I was like, I was definitely surprised. But I mean, it still showed out, like, no doubt.
Right.
Like, just the numbers of quality fish. Like, I know for a fact, like, in practice, I shook one off, like, 110% over 10, like 10 plus, maybe 11. Like, I sat there and I seen this fish, and I'm like, there's no way that's a bass. I'm power pulled down, I look at it, and I pick up a little bandito bug that I had a screw lock on, no hook. I just had a, like, Texas rig bandito bug, like, with the screw lock.
Right.
And I look at it, and I see the male, and he's like 4, and I pitch over there, and no joke, it, like, falls, and the fish goes over and dunk, it starts swimming off with it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like an 11. Like, no, I mean, I'm telling you, I would have, if I had a chance to do it again, I would have definitely picked up the rod that had the hook on it.
Yeah, no kidding. Because how often do you get a look at those fish? They don't stay around very long. I actually twice this week had customers ask me if that was a carp. Like, because you see bass so big swimming around up shallow this time of year. 2 times this week, somebody was like, "Is that a carp?" I'm like, "That's the greenest carp I've ever seen."
That is one thing that, I mean, when you see them suckers, you're just
it's unbelievable.
I looked at him and I was like, "Geez!" At first, I thought it was like a mudfish, and then I realized very quickly it was not.
Yeah.
That you don't see that very often.
Right.
I think that's something that's very special about what you guys have, and
it is.
I mean, about that area, man. It's the thing is, you have to understand, like, and that was the thing. Like, does it seem like that northern end plays pretty well too? At times, like, way up north.
I know where you were fishing, just because I know the lake, and I kind of saw some of the live coverage, watched a little bit of it here and there, and I kind of know the general area you were fishing. I've probably spent more time up there. My first bass was caught on that far end where you were fishing. It definitely happens earlier up there, and you guys were here kind of when our first real wave pulled in, so there was a lot more fish to be had up there than there was on the rest of the lake. Now, I'll tell you, as we get into April, like from where we are right now today, or as of this week going forward, now the southern half around the mouth of Little Caney, all those little pockets around there, Cheney, Raydale, all that stuff really starts coming into play as we move forward into April, and that kind of takes over. And then kind of once we get past that, now people go back up to the north end to catch the fish that are further into the post spawn and better grouped up, and kind of restart the cycle as they move down.
Yep.
So that's kind of, or at least that's how I do it anyway.
I was sitting there and I'm looking and I'm like, man, I ran a couple places that I thought, I trimmed her up, didn't let her eat. I fished a couple tournaments out there in Sam Rayburn, and a couple times I'd run to do some stuff, and I threw some sketchy stuff. I was there on Fork. I didn't hit anything that I could feel. I did come out with I did hit something, but I don't remember hitting it. It's really bent little skag, a tiny bit. I'm like, man, I don't remember hitting that. But when you hit something on pad, it's just like tink. one of those deals. So, I mean, it was just such an interesting place, though. That was the thing, is like, it's such a different dynamic. And that's what I enjoy traveling all over the country, because every place we go to is different. But then when you go to a place that has that reputation, I'm like, man, like I ended up having, ended up finishing 22nd in my group, and I was like right there. And I sat there because we have heavy hitters, and I knew I had a 4 or 7, and I'm like, dude, the second day, I'm like, I got to spend at least 2 hours trying to catch a big one. So I'm throwing a glide bait, I'm throwing a big swim bait. I'm like on some just secondary points. I'm like, I know that if I get a few bites out here, I assume I can catch a couple of these big pre-spawners in that 2 to 6 foot of water, 2 to 8 foot of water. I'm eventually going to get that bite. And I never happened. And then I'm like, all right, I need to try to make the cut. So It's like, that was a different dynamic as well in that event, was how many of those big fish were caught. I actually had bet in the beginning of the week. I did not get any money from the event, win any money from the event because I didn't make the cut. But I did win $300 from Adrian Avina, Mark Daniels, and DC, because I picked there would be 2 10-pounders caught. And there was a 915 caught as well, but that isn't officially a 10. So I won $300. So I might have lost a little money, but I won a little bit too.
Yeah, I saw the video where you guys were practicing or whatever, and y'all made that bet. By the way, if for our listeners, if you're watching our channel, surely you know about Jacob Wheeler. But Jacob Wheeler has a great YouTube channel. Jacob, what is the title name of your channel, bud?
So it's Jacob Wheeler Fishing. So Wheeler Fishing on Instagram, Jacob Wheeler Fishing on YouTube. Man, I've just been getting into it, man. I've been watching some of your stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, it's just fun, man. You just get out there and have fun with it. So I mean, that's just really what it's all about.
I just want to make sure that I heard that. Did you say you've seen some of our videos?
Yeah, man. Obviously
that's a big deal, bro.
I wanted to I always research everything I can, and I looked at it. So like I seen some of your guys' videos early on, like sort of talking about some of the things that you thought might be going down. So like, that's interesting, and so I every time that I get a chance, I'm like, you know what, I gotta check in. So I've obviously not met you personally, but I've followed your channel a little bit. So I've seen quite a bit. I've seen quite a few of your videos through fishing other lakes, fishing that. You always gotta stay up on the YouTube stuff, man. It's always interesting.
It's information sourcing, There's so much information available to you out there. So, absolutely. If I was going anywhere, I'd try to consume everything I could. I'm sure you guys are the same, obviously. So, dude, that's great. And I'll tell you what, man, I'll extend the offer. I know we're on the air kind of here, but dude, anytime you come through Texas, I would absolutely relish the opportunity to get us in the boat and do some collaborative stuff together. That'd be awesome, man.
Dude, I'd be all about it. Heck yeah, man. I mean, it's so interesting because that place, I would definitely want to do that. It's just like, even like going to the tackle stores and seeing all the big swim baits. Yeah. Like, I mean, dude, I bought $1,000 worth of swim baits when I was down there, because I'm like, I don't have that one, and I don't have that one, and I don't have that one. It's just like it's like a dang addiction. So I live up here, right here on Chickamauga. I live like 5 minutes from the lake. So I was like, I'm so intrigued by that whole deal. Like whether it's line throughs and glide baits and belly weight stuff. So it's just interesting to me, that whole big swim bait craze, and just the whole, because there's a lot to it. So we'll have to talk more about about that, and maybe if I guide come through there on the right time, we might have to go out there and throw a big bait.
100,000% I'm in. I don't get to do it as often as I wish I could, or as often as I used to before I was guiding. Now with customers, it's kind of like you got to get some fish in the boat, and sometimes that's not the best way to do it. And sometimes you have customers that honestly can't handle throwing big baits, and so you have to kind of, as a guide, you have to kind of play to their strengths the best you can. But I love going for just a few big bites, and I love throwing the big baits. And you get in the right time, it doesn't have to be a few bites. Sometimes the unique thing about Texas, even the guys that come here from California will tell you, there's no other place where you get the numbers of bites on the big baits like you can here when it's right.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Hey, man, we do normally do a couple questions right off the bat with our guests, and I get so excited sometimes when I get the right guests on here. I blow right past them. I'm going to let Chris ask you. These are a couple of questions that you need to go ahead and gear your mind up for. These might catch you off guard, but we're going to ask them to you.
Okay.
Go ahead and power pole down. The first one is, if you could bring back a hairstyle, what hairstyle would you bring back?
The mullet, man.
That is a very popular one amongst
the
fishermen.
mullet's where it's at.
The mullet.
For
All
sure.
right. So question number 2 is Biggie or Tupac?
Tupac.
Come on.
That's it. That's my
Come
dog.
on.
Listen, I'm just telling you. The man says he's bringing back the mullet. The man says he likes Tupac. The man says he wants to throw big baits all day. And he spent $1,000 at the tackle. So, like, you're my people, bro. Like, you're my best friend. You just don't know it yet. Like, that's the deal.
Oh, man.
That's what's up right there. That's awesome.
You want to transition into can you kind of share your experience kind of room, because I know you and MDJ and Connell all roomed together. What was it like at the fork event, you know,
knowing that he just
that-
caught 80 something pounds? Now I know y'all can't share info, but like, how was that like when y'all are rooming together and you're going out the next day and he just whacked them?
So the thing is, you know, like it's so cool because, like, you know, spending time with them guys, man. You root for your buddies. Now I want to beat them boys every tournament as well, but man, that's not realistic all the time. So I'm sitting there, and when Mark, I'm not competing against him in Group A. He comes in and he's leading the tournament. I'm looking, he's just grinning from ear to ear. I'm like, bro, we can't talk about anything, but I just got to give you a hug, man. Hell of a job, you know? And it's just a thing, man. You love seeing your friends do well. And I think that's what it really is. It's a brotherhood. And we've been hanging around each other for a while now. You know, we've been doing it for a while, and that's really what it, you know, for us, like, man, heck, they're like brothers to me. You know what I'm saying? And that's sort of the thing. You know, it's definitely different. Where when we fished on the elites, where we could talk and we could be like, hey man, they're doing this or they're doing that. But at the same point in time, it really, once you get used to that, I took a little get used to it last year, but once you get used to that, it's just the same stuff. We go in there and we BS. We talk about the next tournament and all that good stuff, you know. And so that's sort of how we play it. But man, I tell you what, I was super proud of my guy, no doubt. And when he came in there, I was just like, sheesh, buddy. Like, you know, you just never know, like, how a guy like Mark or Adrian or DC, how they're catching them, because they're so versatile. And that's something that, like, you see, like, now more than ever, is how the versatility of anglers, it's more important now than ever, especially I feel like it's the most important thing. You see the guys who are consistent, and they're normally fairly consistent anglers, and they're fairly versatile, and they can do multiple different techniques. So, like, I think you sort of guess, to sit there and you might guess, like, hey man, I wonder if he was doing this or that. Obviously I know Mark likes to flip and this and that, but after the tournament was over, you know, a Mathile trick room, I didn't necessarily I'm like, huh, that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting. And I tell you what, that area and how he was able to milk that area for so much, you know, having the intimate knowledge that I have of the lake, I've been in that same little slough he was in. I can't tell you how many times that time of year. And it's a good area. But I've never seen anybody capitalize on it and execute and get as much out of it as he got that day. That was one of the most impressive single-day fishing performances I've ever seen, for him to take that little slough and really show what was in there and catch everything. I mean, it was just, I was in shock.
No, that was insane.
He did it. I mean, that was an amazing performance.
There's no doubt. I mean, I think there's certain anglers that, and sort of DC and I always joke about it. See, Mark's pawpaw mode. We see DC and I, we get on the trolling motor and we go fast. But there's times when you get around them that you have to put that trolling motor back down to about 20%, and you got to creep, and you got to take your time, and you got to fish along, because you're going by so many of them that you could have got to bite, and you don't. Well, Mark, I feel like we call him he plinks a lot too. He plinks around, and he's very good at getting the most out of those areas. I think that's something that we talked about this after the tournament. We're talking about, like, how, you know, in spawn tournaments and when fish pull up, how a lot of times you have, like, I'm a power fisherman. I fish fast. I try to find pre-spawners, post-spawners. I mean, I'll sight fish a little bit, But I feel like that's sometimes I got a lead foot. I like to keep that dang trolling motor going if I can. And so sometimes like you have to lay off that gas a little bit when those fish are pulling up and they're just pulling up there. They're not eating top waters maybe as good as they might in a couple weeks. You get a cold front or whatever, you really have to eke them out. And so that was, Mark's one of the best. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And he really showed out and showed what he could perform. And like I said, I looked at that dang place and I'm like, what? You caught him out of like this little like ditch?
That's what I tried to explain to everybody. It's like if you power pull down right in the center, you can make a long cast to any place in there. Like you can cover the whole thing from one position in your boat.
Like, dude, he said he would go around after he would go around in circles and catch new ones like every circle, and I'm like, what? Really? So he's like, he's never seen that before. So, I mean, I was like, dude, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Part of it, too, was he was in there on the right day when we had the right warming trends leading up to that day, and those fish were he was just getting new fish coming to him throughout the day. And the guy I felt the worst for, because MDJ caught him in there, Fletcher caught some right out in front of him, and now Fletcher was a little more spread out across that northern end of the glade, but he did catch a lot right out in front of where MDJ caught him. The next day I'm watching the live coverage, and Casey Ashley pulls in there and goes to fishing, and I'm like, bro, he doesn't even have a clue what happened in there. Like, there's not a fish left in the county, Jack.
Why are these fish so finicky?
yeah. Oh, man, they were here in practice. Where'd they go?
That is the thing about it, though. There's so much strategy involved with being in Group A and being in Group B and how to go about it. When you're in Group B, you're on Saturday, you're going after 40 other guys, which really 40 guys on Lake Fork's not a big deal normally. But then you factor in every other boat out there. So like it was sort of a deal like you have to sort of prepare. Like there's a different way that I practice. I think a lot of us practice when we have a Group A draw or a Group B draw. And that's sort of unique. And that's sort of the fun part about it is because you have to sort of, go the extra mile and try to prepare and go to places that maybe not everybody's going to go to.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that the format that you guys are partaking in, I mean, from what we saw, just from like with you guys in the Group B qualifying, you were right there in the mix. And then you've got, and listen, we said this in the beginning of the show. I mean, you've probably been, it's hard to argue that you haven't been the best bass fisherman on planet Earth the last couple of years. I mean, you've been unbelievable. But you had two titans of the sport on day 2 of Group B, Kevin Van Dam and Mike Iaconelli. And on top of that, two titans, legends, that kind of have a rivalry, like they've gotten into it a little bit. Like there's a little bit of sauce there. And these two guys were
saltiness.
These two guys, huh?
I said a little saltiness.
A little saltiness, yeah. There's a little. You're not part of this community, okay? Like we all know what happened there. Who won that tournament, by the way?
Which one?
Where he yelled at him about not being part of the community.
Oh, I ended up pulling it out. I did. I was
that's right.
On Chickamauga. That's part of the reason why I moved down here, man. It's this place. I love East. I like Tennessee in general, man. It's a beautiful place. So that was a good week. That was a good week.
That was a good week. It was an entertaining week for all of us watching. We got to watch a young Jacob Wheeler whoop up on them, and we got to watch Kevin and Mike go at it. But anyways, they were, the way you guys format works is like never in the history of me watching. And listen, I go back to the Ray Cobb days and the old dude. I could hum you every tune of the old Bassmaster theme song when it opens up on Sunday morning, right? Like every Sunday morning ESPN, I knew what was going down on Bassmaster. I've never ever watched a tournament and been so into the cut. Like the day 2 cut in Group B where you had Kevin Van Dam and Iaconelli and Jacob Wheeler all fight for a spot, and then Ike catches a 7-pounder and does his Ike stuff.
Dude,
where he goes.
I couldn't believe it.
Completely bonkers.
Like, what? Dude, what?
and the way that it just worked, where he actually knocked Kevin out of qualifying by catching that fish. Man, the format you guys fish is amazing for drama, for television, for the fans. That brings me to my next question. I want you to give us your honest personal opinion, as much as you can, on every fish counts versus best 5.
It's such an interesting deal because I feel like, over the years, obviously I grew up fishing for best 5. That's what a lot of us grew up. I fished 3 fish tournaments. I fished paper tournaments. you know, and at the end of the day, you know, obviously fishing major league fishing events for the last 6 years, 6 years, I want to say. And obviously I love all bass fishing. And it's really, you know, it's interesting because I feel like this is the thing. The biggest thing that I see, you know, I think the first year, you know, you go into a place like a pre-spawn event, most of the time, you know, it really is, it's an interesting deal. Like, you know, I think pre-spawn, your bite numbers are a little bit lower.
Mm-hmm.
Your bite, you know, it's more about being able to how to get a bite and then ultimately how to trigger enough quality fish throughout the day on both sides. I don't, you know, like when I went to the first event at Eufaula, like I was fishing the way I would have fished, whether I was fishing for 5 fish or I was fishing for 100 fish, you know, because I know like offshore doesn't give me the best chance. Now, I think there's both that have an advantage. You know, my biggest thing is, and I still fish 5 fish tournaments. You know, I still fish 3 fish dog fights at the house. You know what I'm saying? Like I love bass fishing. But, you know, the thing is, after starting the Bass Pro Tour last year, we had a 1 pound minimum. And I think in the beginning of the year, you've seen like a lot of the beginning of the year, you had the Raleigh event. You had, you know, Toho was tough fishing, but there were some big ones caught. You had multiple of those events, those pre-spawn, spawn events, and it was really good. And then you had Table Rock back-to-back, where that 1 pound minimum wasn't really conducive. It wasn't the right, you know, it was like, hey, we were targeting fish that were maybe a little bit less than, you know, average keeper or whatever for that body of water. So some of us were, some of us weren't. And I think that was the thing that, it sort of was a deal where we knew, like, ultimately, like in the cups, where you go and a cup event, you know, for Major League Fishing, that's where they started. You know, Major League Fishing, they came out there with the cup events where you jump in the truck. We have no idea where we're going. We go to a hotel, and we leave that hotel at 5 a.m. in the morning or early in the morning, and they drive us to a ramp. We all go out there in the same kind of boat, with the same electronics, and we go fishing, which that's what people fell in love with Major League Fishing, because that was so relatable. Because every angler in America, a lot of times, most anglers, majority of anglers don't get the chance to go out there and practice as much as we do. And so when you get to see some of the best anglers in the country go out there with no practice, no understanding of a body of water, and try to dial it in, that was so intriguing. So they had to change some things up, and I think the 2 pound minimum this year was a great call. You know, I enjoy fishing for quality fish, and I would say majority of the time, when you're targeting 2+ pounders, majority of the time, you know, you're targeting a little bit better than average fish. I'm normally, like, if I'm fishing big schools on the Tennessee River, I'm going to be cranking, you know, or even out there, I'm still going to be cranking and fishing for those quality fish. I think there's obviously still some differences. You know, there still is some differences that, like, you know, hey, listen, you're probably not going to be throwing the big swim baits, but then again, I still was throwing a big swim bait in the midway through that second day, trying to catch enough fish for heavy hitters. So there's a lot of variables that go into it, but man, I enjoy both formats. I enjoy the cut. I enjoy the one thing that I will say with Major League Fishing is the biggest thing that I love about the whole deal is knowing the score and where your position is. That is the biggest thing. When I think about this, if Michael Jordan or LeBron James in the fourth quarter of the NBA Finals did not know what the score was, do you think they would play as hard as they do?
Right, exactly. Well, it gives you guys some opportunities. It gives you guys a lot of opportunities to take chances and, you know, kind of gamble a little bit when you need to. And, I mean, it definitely builds drama and creates better storytelling for sure.
So, I mean, this is the thing. I never – dude, I'll fish 5 fish tournaments. I'll fish Major League Fishing. And long story short, but there's so much – I think that the biggest thing is people just have to try it before they make an opinion on it, because I'll tell you what, it's so much fun, dude. It's so stressful though. When I heard I could only catch a 7-something and then I fell down and I'm like, oh man, like it's all you can do not to throw your eye down, but you're like, dang it, it is what it is, you know, and you got beat, you know, and you got beat. You got out. You just that's how it works. And so, like, but when you win, and you know, like, you made the right decision, and you're climbing that leaderboard, and you got the momentum. Like, there's a momentum swing when you know someone's, like, might catch them in the morning, and then you catch them really good in the middle of the day, and you start climbing up and start running them down, and then you know you're on a good pattern. Like, there's something special about it. I think also the other thing is with fish counts over a 5-fish limit is, you know, 5 fish, you're targeting your 5 biggest, but there's a lot of times that I was fishing tournaments, and that a lot of times where I'll be fishing and a guy might not catch one for maybe 6 hours, and then they pull up on the right place and they catch 3, and then they catch 1, you know, in an hour to go they catch 1 more, and they have 17 pounds, and then I go over there and I catch 50, and I catch 50 3-pounders, and I got 15 pounds, and I was more dialed in, but I never got a big bite, and you know, I'm behind that guy. So there's sometimes that there is a little bit of luck on the big fish side, but then at the same point in time, there is a little bit of the factor of targeting a bigger
right.
fish. So both of them have room to compete, you know, to be in the sport. But I mean, I enjoy both of them very much so. But I definitely enjoy the Major League Fishing side of it as well.
I think there's different tournament scenarios. I think it's basically, so I'm just repeating what you just said, but like at the Lake Fork tournament or the Lake Eufaula tournament, well, the guy who catches the most total weight caught him the best, because everybody's going to be able to catch some big fish. And, you know, if you get into a deal where it's a 5-fish deal, you know, like you said, the big fish luck factor can come into play. But if you get into a situation where you're at a table rock like you were talking about last year, well, now, yeah, it does take more skill to go catch a few 3-pounders than it does to catch all those 1-pounders and 2-pounders. It's you know, more rewarding. You've done a better job if you do catch those few bigger fish. So I think there's certain scenarios where the best 5 might be a better test, and then I think there's kind of a lot of scenarios where your total weight is the better test.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. There's never like a perfect, like, hey, listen, this is the best, or this isn't the best, you know?
Right.
I think that the biggest thing that I've seen, you know, with the variable weight minimum, and that's what they have right now, I think that's the best of both worlds. So we go to a fishery that is just outstanding, and, you know, you go to a St. Lawrence River, you know, here later this year. I mean, there's just so many 3+ pound fish, smallmouth and largemouth, and they don't have the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pounders that Lake Fork has, but there's just so many 3 to 5 pounders. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's crazy about that fishery, where maybe a 3-pound minimum might be the option. You know what I'm saying? So now all you can do is target 3+ pounders. You know, so I think that's something. And then, and like you said, you know, I don't even know if it's necessarily the fact that it's the skill set that you targeting 1-pound fish or 1.5 pound fish or 1.75 pounds is the deal. It's just the fact of what we've been used to over the years. You know what I'm saying? What the norm is. And so, like, we've never, like, so that's the thing, is like when you might pull up on a school of fish, you might catch a limit. You know, if I'm a 5-fish tournament on Table Rock, you know, I would have pulled up there and I might have caught a limit of spotted bass, but I would have spent my time in a completely different area of the lake targeting largemouth more than targeting spots. I still caught some decent spots. I caught some decent largemouth throughout the event, but it was like, you know, it would have changed the way I would have approached it.
Yeah.
For the majority of the events, I would say 80% of the events, I would not approach them any differently. And then I would say, as of last year, 20% of the events that I approached differently per the 1-pound minimum. So that's going to be interesting to see how this variable weight minimum is. I think the 2-pound minimum hit it right on the head with because I mean, at the end of the day, like, nobody wants to see anybody like targeting 1-pounders. Like, you know, I think that was really what it came down to. And when you're targeting 2-pounders on Lake Fork, or 2.5 or 3-pounders, a lot of times you're targeting a little bit better ones too. I mean, the guys like Coulter, who found them all out offshore, and MBJ that had caught them, they caught big bags of 5-fish limits, and they also caught the most that anybody else caught. So, I mean,
Justin Atkins.
That's what I want. You know, that's what's really cool to see.
That dang Justin Atkins, he caught like a 6-pound average for the entire event.
Yeah, I was
or
like,
whatever it was.
Heck, I couldn't even. I was like, what in the world?
It was unbelievable.
Just some dodos. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
It was incredible. And that catch he had on, I don't know if you saw the replay of that, but that catch he had on that spinning rod, that 10-pounder.
Oh, freaking giant, dude.
I mean, that was...
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then I watched, obviously I rewatched it because I'm sitting there and I'm driving home and I'm like, man, I got to watch how this all went down. Like, I'm seeing, like, Christie catch a giant one on a frog, and I'm like, yeah. And then I'm seeing Atkins reeling in the 10 on a spinning rod, and I'm like, you got to freaking kidding me. Like, this is just, like, it was just so entertaining to watch after the fact and see how it all went down and like, what those guys figured out those given days. So, I mean, that's...
Oh, it was easily one of, if not the most entertaining bass fishing tournaments. Of course, I'm a homer. It was on my home lake, so that makes it better for me. But that was one of the most entertaining bass fishing tournaments I think that has ever gone down in the history of the sport. I mean, it was incredible. You know, Atkins, the deal with him was he was catching them big fish, and that, especially, like, I know for sure, like where he caught that 10-pounder, he was able to get away with that spinning gear because there wasn't any stumps down there. Like, that area he was fishing in doesn't have all the stumps that most of the lake has. Like, if he'd have pulled that mess somewhere else, that 10-pounder and a lot of those big fish would have broke his heart on that spinning gear.
Oh, there's no doubt. Them suckers, I had a couple of them wrangle me up, and I thought they were big. I lost one in practice messing around, and I was like, gosh. I mean, it was probably a 6-something, and I did not realize. Them suckers out there,
they're mean.
They're strong, son. Especially when they're fat and pre-spawn. They are not playing around. I remember hooking one in a TDBC event there. And in that tournament, you know, they give away a truck for a big fish.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there, and I remember I pull up on this offshore place. I throw a swim bait out there. One just doinks it. I set the hook. It's a 6. I get it. I'm like, heck yeah, it's awesome. It was fighting like crazy. I get it in, and I throw it back out there, and on the fall, one gets it. Normally when they get on the fall, they're big. And I set the hook, and, dude, she comes up, and she's like a 10. Like a lady. It was every bit of a 9-something, and I think it was a 10, okay? And I don't want to – I've only hooked like 4 10s in my life. I caught one, and it was a 12-38. So I hooked this fish, and she comes jumping out of the water. I'm like, I got your butt. Like, I'm not even freaking out or nothing. I get her next to the boat, and she's like wallering. She can't even get her head out of the water. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, whatever. And I go to grab her mouth, and the swim bait comes out of her mouth, and I grab her, and I just get up underneath her belly and pin her to the side. And if you've seen the meme where, like, they hold that fish and it's, like, flopping, like that bark and it's, like, flopping out of your hands, well, imagine that with one hand. Boom! And then she took off like a bat out of heck. And I was like, oh. I wanted to cry. You know, at that time, the big fish of the tournament was like 9-12, and Jason Christie had it.
Yeah.
And then Ingnieur caught a giant one the last day and ended up winning the truck in the tournament. So it made me feel a whole lot better. But I was worried that that one might have cost me a Toyota Tundra.
Yeah, I remember that when you guys were dealing with flooding conditions. I remember that tournament. I actually watched you fish a little bit of that tournament. You would have no way of knowing this, but back then I watched you fish. You were fishing out there on one of the pump house points out in front of the big pump house out there.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I remember I watched you catch a couple out there off of that, and then cruise around and check out some other guys. But yeah, yep, I remember that event. And Ayler, he caught one that was a 10-pounder, like on the last cast of the day, on the last day, and it won the tournament, the truck, the whole deal. It was awesome.
I know. That's the thing. We need to come down there every year, man. I love fishing out in that place. You know, it's so versatile. I think that was the thing is, like, in that tournament, there was still fish that were out, and that was the only thing that I kicked myself in the head for a little bit. I might kick myself in the butt for. I'm like, dude, come on. Like, the conditions just look so perfect to catch them on the bank, and 8 out of 10 in the top 10 did. Yeah. But it was just like, dang it. If you found that needle in the haystack out for like Michael Neal did and like Coulter did, you would have it to yourself. And that was the deal. There just wasn't enough of those fish. There was enough fish out. There wasn't enough fish out that were like grouped up in the right spots to catch, though. Like,
there was a lot of fish that ran to the bank that week because, like, leading up to that, like, in my mind, I was like, okay, it's going to be a shallow wind-blown point deal. Whoever figures that deal out and gets a little milk run is going to win it. And then all of a sudden, the 2 or 3 days before the tournament happened, I was like, whoa, everything just changed.
Sun just comes, sun's blazing. You're just like, everything's changing.
Everything
That's just
changed.
crazy, man.
Everything changed, and there just wasn't
how all that stuff changes in a matter of a day, and all of a sudden you're like, you think this is going to happen, all of a sudden, bam.
And now we've gotten to a point now where we have a big wave of spawners in. We have a few of those post spawners out, and we've got the next wave of spawners on the same spots that the post spawners are on. So not only are we catching the sight fish, but we got a few of our guides around the lake that are really like main lake structure type guys. Like you probably know Lee Livesay that fishes the Elite Series, and a couple other guys around the lake are really catching them, pretty darn well on the little wind-blown shallow point deal that I thought would have won y'all's tournament if we didn't have those 2 days of weather that we had. Now that deal's got the pre and the post hitting it, and you got the spawners in. It's unbelievable right now.
It just hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah, it's crazy right now. So.
Jeez, dude. Y'all got something special. There ain't no doubt right there.
We sure do. Now, one thing I heard you kind of touch on a little bit earlier, and I want to ask you about, because this is kind of like, as a, I'm a fishing guy to make my living fishing, but I'm not a tournament professional, never have been, never have gotten close to it. I've never even really attempted to go down that avenue. But, the general consensus among people when I hear them talking about you guys is that y'all just don't care and y'all run wherever. Like, if you don't see wood, it's all good type of deal. Tell me what your mental outlook is on when you get to a lake like Fork. How do you decide where to run, how to run? Like, how cautious or uncautious are you?
So, man, it's tough because there's certain times you get frustrated and all of a sudden you just send it.
Full send.
But, I mean, most of the time, this is the thing. I knew looking at Fork and just getting a boat lane, ship, buying it at one of the tackle shops, and just looking at the lake and seeing all the timber, that one of the biggest things and biggest advantages to that lake is being able to understand how to run it and run it efficiently. And that a lot of times is the biggest thing in any tournament is try to figure out the way you could get an advantage. And at Fork, it was really being able to efficiently move around if you had to. Now, the problem is it really came down to an area deal where you needed to be really set down in an area, where I like to run around a lot more and be able to efficiently run into places, run out of places. So if I don't like what I'm seeing, I can get the heck out of there quickly rather than and make a quick adjustment. That's my thing. I hate putting all my eggs in one basket. So looking at Lake Fork, I did a little bit of research. I got just one of a chip where all the boat lanes where you could run them and know that. But then as I practiced, I would take my time and idle through this place in the sign image, and I would mark where there weren't trees. And a lot of times, this is the thing, a lot of times, if in the I'm not going to run crazy stuff in practice. It makes no sense. But in the tournament, when you have time, time is money. And so if you can ultimately give yourself 10 or 15 or more minutes of fishing, and you feel like, that I feel pretty confident that if I idle through this area and I don't see the trees like that, if I idle through there and I don't hit anything, then I probably can run through there more than likely if I've idled through in and I've idled through there out a little bit off to one side, so where I have a pretty big wide area. So a lot of times that's what I would do. I would idle in those places. Now, I did run a place in the tournament after day one. I think the first 3.5 hours I did not have a scorable bass. And I was just frustrated. I'd run to a place, I'd run in there, and there'd be 10 boats in there. I'd fish a little bit, but you couldn't really move around at all. And so I ran into a creek arm, and I ran into an area, and I shut down. And the guy's like, "Man, I've been fishing here 30 years. I ain't never seen nobody run there." Okay. So, I mean, you got to be careful at the same point in time. I don't think everybody's that way, but I definitely. It's a deal where you have to look at it and is the risk worth the reward, and because at the end of the day, if you trash your stuff and you can't get to the next place, that's not very good either. So I had to have a pretty good idea that I knew what was there. I wasn't running into places or running places that I did not idle in practice. You know what I'm saying? And that was the biggest thing for me, that I just try to give yourself, the best and most of an advantage you possibly can. And in that deal is more fishing time with being able to run around. But it was definitely a deal where you had to be careful about it for sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. It's just a calculated risk deal. I mean, you guys got a lot of money on the line, and time and efficiency can be a big deal, like you talked about. And so you got to that's just another decision. You guys' life and y'all's game is all about decisions. And
hey, what's that creek? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What's that creek up there on the right-hand side with a bridge in it, like way up the lake? Or not way up the lake, but like 3/4 of the way up the lake.
Oh, west. Okay, so you're talking about Birch. You went up Birch way past the power lines?
Yeah, the power line in the back of it.
Now, were you past the first or the second power lines? Because you go far enough up Birch, there's another set of power lines.
The first, I think you're talking about, hold on, I'm talking about when you go past the first bridge running up the west.
Yeah.
Right?
Before you get to the second one, you turn right.
Since they're in the main lake, right?
Yeah.
The biggest part. And then you go up, and before you get to the next bridge, it's on the right-hand side.
Yeah, that's Birch, and there's a bridge in the creek, and you keep running past that, and there's power lines?
Yes, and then you keep going back there about a mile on the right, and there's some fence rows and stuff.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So that's the sketchiest thing I probably ran out of there on that.
Yeah, there's
a few that'll grab you up there.
So that's probably the sketchiest stuff that I ran out of.
Like, there's a way to run up there.
But that was probably the sketchiest stuff I ran out of.
There's a way to run up there. I'm not sure that you hit it, because it's kind of like you got to go way to the side and then up and then cut back across. And it's kind of an old known trail. And unless you know it, I don't think Jacob
will. I just trimmed her up and let her eat.
Bro, I've got to send you.
It was not a good calculator risk. That was what I was getting to.
Yeah.
It took a long time to get there, but that was where I was getting to.
So one of these days, I'm going to pull up one of my old pictures from when the lake was 6 foot low and I was fishing up there in the hydrilla mats when we had them up there. Because that whole area past those power lines used to be a solid mat of hydrilla. And when the lake was low, I'll send you a picture when the lake was low, and you'll see how many stumps. I mean, it's like...
Oh, I already know. I could see them when I was running by them.
It looked like a tree farm up there.
You just trim her up.
I mean, if you get enough boat out of the water... If you get enough boat out of the water, your odds are pretty good, right?
Well, that's what I thought. I was sort of thinking that. At that point in time, I was frustrated. I was stuck on 7 stumps, running around. Hadn't got a lot of bites. I'm like, forget this. The wind's blowing about 30. I was in practice, too. Wind's blowing about 20, muddying up everything. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, no, we got to get the heck out of here. Whop, whop. I chopped on down the pond.
Just let her eat.
Hey, we definitely saw some guys getting some props worked on and some skegs looked at.
Oh, you're gonna have that. But it wasn't. Hey, you got to be careful. That was the only one that I was like, I sort of clinched. I was like flinched a little bit. I'm like, I don't know about this one, guys. I don't know about this one. Sort of one of those deals.
So basically, folks, what I'm hearing for the folks that are listening out there is everything you thought about these guys just saying trim it high and let it go, it's all true. It's all true.
It's not all the time. It's very seldom. I'm not saying I do it all the time. I do not do that all the time.
That's funny.
I would say that was one of those times when you get to the point where you're like, all right, you're a little frustrated, and you're like, you know what? You only have 6 more hours of practice, and you got 3 more places you need to go check. That was one of those deals.
I understand.
That was one of those deals.
I understand, man. I know. I remember in that TTBC tournament that we were talking about, where I watched you fish a little bit out there in front of the Pump House Point. You were up there fishing, and while I was watching you, Hackney ran between. I was staying pretty far out off you. I was out there kind of close to where the designated unknown boat run is, the one that's on the boat link ships that you referenced earlier. And I was inside of that watching you. And Hackney ran between me and you kind of across the tip end of one of them points. And I know what's on that point. And I kind of looked at, my old tournament partner was with me that day watching. And I kind of looked over at him and he looked at me and we just shook our head like, oh, Hackney just, He's kind of throwing caution to the wind.
I was watching live. Hackney wasn't giving 2 flips either. That sucker was running out like crazy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hackney will stick and move. That's one thing I do know.
He will stick and move. There ain't no doubt. The only other one I ran to in the tournament the only other one I ran to was back in what's it? Is it running? The one up there on the right hand side, the very very back of running.
If you ran to the very back of running, you are a crazy person.
All right, is running the one the far right hand side? There's an oil
well bay.
Right hand side. Is that oil well belt? Oil well
back
bay?
there where Strader was fishing, that's oil well bay.
Okay, I didn't run the back of running. I ran in the back of oil well. Is there a bridge to the back of there?
In the very back left corner, there's a little bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, I ran to the creek channel.
Yeah, I know. I saw some part of something where I don't know if it was a picture or a replay or live coverage. I remember seeing you and thinking, "Oh, he's up there in Old Bay."
Yep, that's where I was at. Yep. Absolutely. Okay, so that's oil. See, I don't know all this terminology. I'm just saying up that way. Like I got my north, east, west, south messed up there for a little bit, just for the fact of the way the weight runs.
I'm gonna tell you, I've kind of started to know like some of the official names. But there was a long time that I fished Lake Fork where I didn't know, like, I had my own made-up names for these places.
That's where I was at.
Like, we had...
It's Pigeon Point.
we have a place we call Donkey Ditch that's not on a map anywhere. You know what I mean? But we caught some donkeys out of a ditch with some grass in it, so we called it Donkey Ditch. And, that's just kind of how that goes. But, hey, man, I got one more question. Dude, you stayed on forever, and I sure appreciate it so much. But one more question I want to ask you. I want you to tell me, because you have won... I mean, it'd be a lot easier for me to tell the folks at home what you haven't won. You haven't won a Bassmasters Classic, and you haven't won a Red Crest because there's only been one opportunity to win one of those, and Edwin won it. But other than that, you've pretty much won a little bit of everything there is to win, including before you were known. You won, was it a BFL Junior All-American?
There's a lot of I've had a good time. The junior stuff I won back in the day. I won a divisional, and then I won. I don't think I've ever won. I never won a championship in the junior deal stuff, which is now high school. So but I mean, I tell you what, that was a big stepping stone for sure.
Yeah, and I remember the first time I heard your name. I think this was the first time I heard your name. It was one of the first times for sure. Was on. Joe Thomas on his old fishing show, like Steel Outdoors or something like that.
Yeah,
he was talking about how you'd won the Junior All-American or something. You'd won something.
Oh yeah. I won. Yes. So like, he was starting the division, and then I won the All-American, and that was sort of like the jump start of the whole deal.
There you go.
Like that was the biggest thing, man. It was crazy. But yeah, Joe and I fished together since I was like probably 17. So.
Yep. Yeah, he mentioned you on the show and talked about how you were a fishing prodigy, and that was my introduction to Jacob Wheeler. And I've kind of followed you ever since, and it's been unbelievable. You won the FLW Cup, or the Forcewood Cup, at a stupid young age. You won the first Elite Series event you participated in. You won it. I mean, your resume speaks for itself. What I'm curious to know is, what is your personal favorite tournament fishing performance you've ever had? What's your favorite tournament memory? What's your favorite tournament performance?
Man, that's such a tough one. I feel like each of them have a story, and this is the thing. I thought, Billy, the biggest thing is fishing. As somebody asked me questions like, man, they were just like, man, it's so awesome wins. Like, yeah, absolutely. It's like, the sport, it's so hard to win one.
Yeah.
In general. Like, people in any other sport, you have basketball, you have so many games, and it's like, if you win a tournament, man, you put everything and all you had into that event. If you come out on top for that week, man, it's an amazing feeling. But I will say the most meaningful out of all of them, I'll just tell you that. I mean, I look at all of them, and a little luck, had to come into a little bit of opportunity in the right time. Had to come into a lot of them, and things were just meant to happen. That I can look back at like single fish where I wouldn't have caught that fish, or if I didn't make that decision, I wouldn't have won. But the most meaningful probably out of all of them was probably the All-American, because that was my opportunity. You know, I think that I'm 29 right now. I won the All-American when I was 20. And without that tournament win, I wouldn't be fishing professionally right now. I really highly doubt that. You know, I had my uncle that allowed me to borrow his boat when I was fishing at a young age, or fishing, you know, after high school, and you know, I fished a lot of the BFLs, and I fished the BFL series and qualified when I was 19 to fish All-American for that following year, and that was really straight up, that was my opportunity that I felt, you know, to fish professionally. I don't think financially that I would have ever made it to fish professionally outside of winning the All-American and getting that opportunity. So to me, that was number one. Obviously, then after that was the Cup, because it was the progression of what my, you know, the career. I think each one of them is so meaningful, but those two right there were like, bam, you have your opportunity, and then all of a sudden the very next year, 21, I'm like, I made it, and I won $500,000. And I remember doing an interview back in my home in Indianapolis at that point in time, at one of the local news stations. They're like, what'd you buy? You know, you've won $600,000. You've won like $800,000 the last 2 years. You're 21. And I'm like, man. I bought 2 brand new pairs of shoes is what I bought. I went out and bought, I think I bought 3 pairs. You know, it was the biggest thing. They're like, man, you buy a car. No, I didn't. I still lived at the home after I won after I won the Forrest Wood Cup, and I was just like, man, man, it was just the little things that mattered. So that was a really important time in my life, and I cherish those memories. You know, man, it was really a big deal.
Now you won the Forrest Wood Cup at 21. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, were you the youngest to ever win the Forrest Wood Cup?
What's that?
Were you the youngest to ever win the Forrest Wood Cup?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep, that's what I thought. Man.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean,
it's been well, dude. As a fan of the sport, it has been a joy to watch you. You know, like I said, I was on you early from the Joe Thomas deal and the exposure there, and to see you come from that, and then, like I said, watch you immediately be the youngest Forrest Wood Cup winner. Then when you crossed over and fished that Bass Fest on the Tennessee River, and you won your first event against the Elite field, and then you get on the Elite Series and you win again, and then now you've transitioned it over to the MLF, where, you know, like I said, arguably you've probably been the best fisherman on the planet since that deal's kicked off. Personally, I want to thank you for providing me great entertainment in the sport that I love the most, man. So it's been awesome to watch you, brother.
Man, I appreciate all the kind words, but at any time, man, I keep doing what you're doing, man. I've got to follow you for a little while now, and doing a good job. And shoot, man, I appreciate that. We're all out here, bass heads alike, just trying to go out here catch a bass every day. And I mean, that's a cool thing, man. It's just like, no matter where we live in the country, that's our end goal. And so that's why it's so easy, man. It's just like, shoot, if I wasn't a professional bass fisherman, I'd be doing something in the bass fishing community. So it's so easy just to be able to talk bass fishing with everybody, you know?
Absolutely, man. Well, dude, thank you so much. You gave us a ton of your time tonight. I can't thank you enough for that. I know you're a busy guy, man. I can't wait to see how everything unfolds once we get all the madness that's happening in the world behind us. Now, y'all guys are postponed until further notice right now. Is that correct?
Right now, yeah, that's sort of the consensus right now. I think until we hear, you know, we postponed the Raleigh event. You know, they'll sort of look. We don't have the next event scheduled until Grand, which is late April. So they'll look at everything. Obviously, every week is there. You know, it's day by day, week by week. Right. We're just learning more stuff. Yeah. So they'll just make a educated decision on what's going on in the country. I'm sure they'll do a good job of that. So
awesome, man. Well, we'll be looking forward to it, buddy. Thank you again for your time, and we'll catch up with you soon, man. Y'all have a good one.
All right, sounds good, brother. You guys have a great night.
You too. So that wasn't cool or anything.
Yeah, I mean, that was like an entire show. Like, we had some other topics to kind of discuss, but we just spent an entire episode with Jacob Wheeler, and I couldn't possibly think of any better way to do it than just that. I mean, he is, like we said, arguably the best fisherman on planet Earth, and he's, you know, what's really cool is we've got to talk to a couple of these guys now on the air. and they're all just dudes, man.
Just
they're
like
just
us.
dudes. They just love fishing. That's what I always tell people when we work the Fun and Sun show every January, we go over there, and I'll tell these people that I run into, they're like, oh, look, man, there's Greg Hackney, oh, look, there's Todd Faircloth, or whoever it may be. I don't know whoever it is. You know, Brandon Polnick was a big name this year that was there. I'm like, man, just go talk to him.
Yeah.
He's just a guy that loves to fish. Go talk fishing with him, you know. He loves to talk. And they're normal people. You know, that's one thing that's unique about our sport is we don't have these $1 million bonus babies that were, you know, kind of anointed from birth because they had some physical gifts. These are guys that usually come from, some of them come from some monetarily, you know, well-off backgrounds, but most of them come from humble backgrounds. They love to spend time in the outdoors. They value their family and their faith and their fishing over everything else.
They're so personable.
It's like faith, family, fishing in that order. And like that's all that matters to them. And they're just really normal dudes, and that they're you know grateful to get the opportunity to fish every day for a living. Kind of like what we always preach around here. I'm so grateful that I get to go and take people fishing every day for a living, and it's really cool to see the guys that you look up to, and then get to talk to them and spend a little time talking to them and understand that, man, they're just good people.
It's just nice to know that, you know, guys like Jacob Wheeler and, you know, Kelly Jordan, like, you know, they're guys that I feel like if I was a professional fisherman, I don't need any excuse to talk fishing with anybody.
Like we would hope.
Yeah.
We would hope that's how we would be, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
exactly.
our deal. Like if I was able to achieve the status they achieve, I hope that I can be like that.
Exactly.
You know,
It's
which
just-
makes them, you know, role models. People
Yes,
to look up
100%.
to. And the cool thing about our sport is, you know, like in a lot of sports, you can say, man, a lot of them guys at the top end ain't necessarily who you want to be.
Right.
In our sport of bass fishing, the vast majority of the guys at the top of the sport, that's who you want to be when you want to be just like him. You want to be that kind of man, that kind of person.
Core values.
And that's what's really the coolest thing about it, man. It's a good deal. You know, like we were there at the launch on Sunday. You know, day 2 for Group A. We were there for the launch together. And we filmed that podcast episode there after they launched. And you know, they open every day with a prayer and the national anthem.
That's right.
And man, that's a beautiful thing. It makes you proud to be a member of and a part of this bass fishing community and be into this deal, because you could do it knowing that even at the highest level, with all the money on the line, they represent the values and the integrity and the thing, you know, the right things.
That's right.
Man, that's been awesome. We had some other stuff to talk about. I don't think we need to go into it. I think that's been a great episode.
Yep.
You got like 2 words in tonight because me and Jacob Wheeler were talking, and I get a little obsessed when I get one of them guests on that I really love. I just keep talking.
Hey, that's fine. I was beside myself the whole time. Yeah, it really was.
It was really cool, man.
Because, I mean, it's not every day you get to talk.
And how about he watched our stuff?
I know.
Like, coming to Lake,
I know.
like, I mean, I realize that I do a lot of Lake Fork. I have more Lake Fork content out there than anybody, but the fact that somebody like Jacob Wheeler watched my content, like, that's awesome, dude. Like, that's really cool.
And what I took away from it is he's no stranger to the channel. It's not like he just watched it one time.
No, he sounds like
sounds
he's seen a few, and that's
good.
That's amazing, unbelievable, and humbling in every way that it could be. So that's we've made it.
We made it.
We've made it.
Look, Ma, no hands.
In fact, I think that's what Miss Alicia's in there screaming, is that she's made it. Dinner's ready. So, Chris, do that thing you do.
Bazinga.